Ho, ho, ho! I'm Big Juicy, and I'm here in Cisco, Texas, to see how the birthplace of hospitality became the original Christmas capital of Texas. Eat your heart out, Grapevine. In 1917, folks from the Texas and Pacific Coal Company saw the writing on the wall. Shipments of coal to the North Pole were slowing down, and it was just a matter of time before the industry would be up the chimney as well. T&P engineer William Gordon decided to drill for oil. In October, he hit big in nearby Ranger, Texas with the J.H. McCleskey Well No. 1. This well came on producing 1,700 barrels a day, just in time for Christmas. The success of the McCleskey Well brought oil men from all over the place, and within 9 months, over 400 wells were drilled. The increased activity caused the town of Cisco to bust at the seams. The 40-room Mobley Hotel was hot sheeting beds and charging each room out 3 times a day in 8-hour shifts. You could even get a chair in the hotel lobby for $5 a night or $2.50 during the day. They even charged to sit in Santa's lap. And it was about that time that Conrad Hilton, back from World War I, came into town to buy a bank. Hilton was born on Christmas Day, and the bank was going to be an early Christmas present to himself. When he arrived, they asked for more money, so he let the deal go. He noticed the business at the Mobley Hotel and made Mr. Mobley an offer. Mobley wanted to get into the oil business himself, so he sold the hotel to Hilton for $40,000 cash. This would be known as the first Hilton Hotel, even though it never bore his name. A few years later, the day before Christmas Eve, in fact, a man dressed in a makeshift Santa suit walked down the main street in Cisco. He had a parade of children following him, trying to make some last-minute gift requests. He walked right into the First National Bank, where they greeted him with a, "Howdy, Santa." 3 other men slipped in behind him unnoticed. The men pulled out their guns and said, "This is a ho-ho hold-up. Grab some sky." Santa drugged the teller to the vault, pulled out an Idaho potato sack, and started filling it with cash and bonds. Meanwhile, a 6-year-old girl named Frances saw the Santa in the bank and went in. Her mother quickly noticed there was a bank robbery going on, so she kept walking to the side entrance in the back. They made their way past the bank robbers' getaway car to the police station, where they reported the robbery. Bank robberies were becoming an all too frequent event in Texas, so the Texas Bankers Association recently came up with a reward system. $5,000 for each dead bank robber, and not 1 cent for 100 live ones. With $20,000 worth of bank robbers ready to be killed, the police needed to act quickly with a plan. Cisco's police chief, Bitt Bedford, grabbed 2 of his men and dashed over to the bank. The 2 officers guarded the side door in the alley, while Bedford went to guard the front door and the far end of the alley. When people heard the news of the bank robbery, they went to the hardware store to buy all their guns and ammo. Once armed, the men crouched in the alley, waiting to cash in on the reward money. A gunshot was heard, and the vigilantes started shooting into the bank. Santa and his elves forced the customers out the side entrance, towards the getaway car, using them as human shields. The elves piled in, and they started driving off, taking a right down Avenue D. As they drove off, they realized they had forgotten to get gas. So at 14th Street, they flagged down an Oldsmobile and forced the family out of the car. One of the elves was injured so badly, so they carried his body over to the car and propped him up on the bag of money. They all piled into the vehicle and then realized that the 14-year-old driver had swiped the keys before leaving. The posse from town started to arrive with bullets flying. The robbers piled back into the original getaway car and took off, but they didn't have time to get their injured partner. When the posse arrived, they found an unconscious Lewis Davis in an Idaho potato sack full of cash and bonds. The robbers left the money behind. Lewis died later on that night from his wounds in a Fort Worth hospital. No one's ever claimed the reward money from the Texas Bankers Association. Police Chief Bitt Bedford was also killed, and one of his officers was in a coma and would die later. The crew fled about 5 miles south of town and ran out of gas on a dirt road. They left the car and went back into Cisco, where they stole a Model T convertible. That night, it began to snow. Snow! It won't be long before the car is full of snow. Looks like it'll be a white Christmas after all. They continued to Moran, Texas, where they spent Christmas Eve and then wrecked their car in Putnam on Christmas Day. They carjacked Carl Wiley and had him drive them back to Breckenridge. Texas, that is. They let him go and stole another Model T. That's when they realized they were not in Breckenridge, but back in Cisco. Carl Wiley walked back into the Cisco Police Department and reported his own kidnapping. The idiots fled north to South Bend, Texas, and were run down by the Texas Rangers. Santa was shot and apprehended. Police identified him as Marshall Fields Ratliff. He was named after the department store, famous for its Christmas window decorations. The remaining 2 elves were caught in nearby Graham and identified as Robert Hill and Henry Helms. The men were quickly put on trial. Robert Hill confessed and got 5 to 99. He escaped prison multiple times but was always caught. He was released in 1942 and given a full pardon in 1964. Henry Helms got pegged for killing the officers and he was placed on trial here in Eastland. The trial was held in the city auditorium because the courthouse was being rebuilt. Well, there must have been some magic in that bloody Santa hat they found, because on the day of jury selection, a horned frog that was sealed up in the cornerstone of the old courthouse for 31 years was found alive and began to dance around. For more information on that story, see Big Juicy Tidbit number 5. Helms was found guilty and executed by Old Sparky on September 6, 1929. His last meal was cabbage, sausage, tomatoes, coffee, and pie. Ratliff received a death sentence as well and began acting crazy after Helms was executed. Back then, it was illegal to execute insane people, so they sent him to Eastland County Jail for psychiatric testing. Jailer Pat Kilborn administered the exam. They poked him with a pin and threatened to stab him in the eye with a fork to see if he would flinch. He didn't. And that night, Ratliff attacked the jailers and he tried to make an escape. After shooting one of them, he was knocked unconscious and thrown back in his cell. The following day, a mob of over 1,000 people gathered outside the jail, shouting, "We want Santa Claus!" They tackled the jailer and stole his keys. Moments later, they dragged Ratliff from his jail cell to the alley behind the Majestic Theater. Conveniently, the performance that night was the great Willard Mack play, The Noose. The mob stole the stage prop and slipped it around his neck. They hoisted him up, but the rope didn't hold because it was a stage prop. They tied another noose, and after uttering, "Forgive me, boys," Santa was hung like a Christmas ornament until he died. Ratliff was buried in Olivet Cemetery in Fort Worth on Friday, November 23rd, 1928, Black Friday. As people were weeping, a department store parade was going down the street. A band was playing Christmas music, leading the way for a man dressed in a makeshift Santa suit. Some people have pondered whether or not Conrad Hilton had orchestrated the robbery to get revenge for the failed bank deal years before. If so, he took this secret to the grave. But maybe, just maybe, he left us a clue behind. If you go to his gravesite in Dallas, you'll find his eerie parting words to the world. Christmas is forever. Well, I'm Big Juicy, and this was Big Juicy Tidbit number 12. Please subscribe to my channel to receive updates when new videos are posted. They make great Christmas gifts for those you love. Also, visit my website at bigjuicytidbits.com to see what tens of people already know. Remember, Some people make history, and some people make up history. Until next time, keep it juicy.